All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today in person as well as on Zoom. And welcome to the Basement's second annual Innovation Sprints Showcase. My name is Ann Lynch, and I'm a third-year undergrad bioengineering major here at UCSD with a focus in biotechnology. I'm also the current president of the International Society for Pharmaceutical Engineering here at UCSD, captain of the women's triathlon team, and house advisor from your college. And I was also part of the 2021 Innovation Sprints team, working with the San Diego Zoo on Project Super, a machine learning project to improve animal welfare. It taught me a bunch of leadership skills and technical skills that I've used in my current positions here on campus and will continue to use in my future career. All right, and now for a quick land acknowledgement of the land we are currently on. The UC San Diego community holds great respect for the land and the original people of the area where our campus is located. The university is built on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay Nation. Today, the Kumeyaay people continue to maintain their political sovereignty and cultural traditions as vital members of the San Diego community. We acknowledge their tremendous contributions to our region and thank them for their stewardship. All right, and now for our opening remarks, we have our special guest, our Vice Chancellor for Research, Corey Picasa. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for stepping up and being the mic. I don't have any. Yeah, it's kind of humbling as I get old and I realize, students have these CVs of activities that just exhaust me to hear about them. So good for you, future leaders. This is the most energized space I have been in since I joined UC San Diego in January. So I'm really delighted to be here, really excited to hear the pitches, learn about how you're working with companies. And to me, this is really the magic that brings together what universities are supposed to do. Our industry partners, bringing in our research expertise and aligning students with those real world experiences. We can teach you the basics, then you can take that and solve our big problems. And I apologize that our generation is leaving you some big messes, and it makes me really depressed some mornings, but I do have to say, when I wake up in the morning and I walk on campus and I see the brilliance that I'm amidst, I do feel some optimism, and it makes me energized to try to leave you things a little bit better and to make sure you have the skills, the opportunities, and the resources you need to help fix some of the messes we've left you. So Paul gave me some talking points, but I'm not very good at instruction. So I'm going to try to get the highlights that I know he wanted me to say. I will say Paul is a big fan of the word disruptive. And to me, it's interesting that in university education, so much of what we're doing, walk this way, okay. So much of what we're doing, okay, I'm getting in the sound zone, is just so teaching problem solving, listening skills, strategy, negotiation, and all very consensus building. But then the other piece we also really need to do is to teach disruption, to help you embrace chaos and find a path through that chaos. And to me, the exemplary place that we do the disruption while teaching process and consensus building is in the basement. So the experience of thinking in that way and doing it with people who think in different ways are really tenets of what the university is trying to create. There's a lot of focus on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we really go to what is the core element of that. It is the embracing of other perspectives that are not your own, the lived experience and histories that are not your own, and enriching, making yours better because of those interactions. And that is the kind of interaction that happens here. People who got to the university in completely different ways, people who want to do completely different things with their time at the university, and people who will go on to do completely different things in the future with what you do here at the university. So that is also a very exciting thing that we can create in the university space. And in doing all of that and embracing all of that, the other piece that each of you get is twofold. One is that you get to be part of something that is so much bigger than your piece of the basement, and that is exciting. You have a really important part of the basement, but when we think about what went into creating the space, what went into bringing the industry partners together, what the thinking and the organization and the staffing that went into how do we prepare you for these really difficult problems that you're solving are important. And it's something that is that you'll take with you. And the other thing I hope you take with you is that the students you meet here are your future network. So I'm an introverted person. I have to really be mindful about keeping connections going. But when I do that, it has always paid off. So take the extra time, even though you're tired after the 18 million committees that you're on, Anne, to see who wants to go out for happy hour afterwards. And just make sure you protect your creative time and creative space and are spending that time with people you're comfortable with, but also people you learn to trust who maybe aren't so comfortable with you, that are really going to bring the perspective you never thought of. And so embracing that chaos in a way that you feel fully facilitated to find the path forward is something we really want to create here in the basement. And you've already done a lot of that. We get to celebrate so many of the solutions that you've come up using these tenets of diverse thinking and interaction. So we're seeing the best of the best. And I'm just going to turn it back over to Anne so we can start celebrating the work you've already done. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey, for the great introduction talk. And a little bit about Innovation Sprints. This program is a 2-quarter-long opportunity for multidisciplinary teams of students to explore entrepreneurship, build new approaches, grow new businesses, and create new realities. And the goal of this program is, like Corey said, to create disruptive solutions to real-world challenges provided by regional and national partners. And we've had the great privilege of partnering with new corporate partners this year that we hope to have in the future, as well as additional ones. All right, and just a brief overview of how today will work. We will have the partners, which are the businesses, come and introduce the student projects, followed by the student presentation, then followed by a Q&A. So feel free to think of questions as you're sitting in the audience, and on Zoom, feel free to put your question in the webinar chat. All right, and first up, we have our representatives from the San Diego International Airport. We have Kimberly McLean.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here tonight. Thank you all for coming. I am Kimberly McLean. I'm the Manager of Innovation and Customer Experience Design at the airport. And go ahead. What we asked our students to do was to take a look at a space that we have at the Rental Car Center on our airport campus. If you go to the Rental Car Center, it's this beautiful building, and I'll show a picture of it in a minute. And above where all the normal activity takes place, there's a 5,000 square foot empty space that has been empty since day one, since we opened the building. And we don't know what to do with it. We had a plan, the plan fell through, and it's just been sitting there, and it's a beautiful, beautiful location. And internally, I think there's just been so much conversation about it that now we're kind of, dead in the head about where we can go with this, and nobody wants to talk about it. And so we thought we need fresh perspective. We need people who are going to be our future customers, our future employees, our future partners. We need this mindset of people who are disruptors, who are bringing a little bit of chaos to our world. And how do we look at this problem differently than what we've been doing before? So it is, as I say, a 5,000 square foot space. There's a huge potential for revenue, whether it's through business or if it's through like a business partnership, or if it's through something like a food and beverage or a retail space. We really had no idea. There are so many opportunities here. The challenges that we faced, and the reason that it had sat empty for so long, was that it's not up to code, in that the rest of the building is fine, but this 5,000 square foot space doesn't have an HVAC system installed in it. So whoever comes into the space needs to put that in, and it's just so prohibitively expensive that we haven't really broached the subject with any business partners yet. But we're in an opportunity space right now where we can say we're looking ahead to the next 60 years, being here in this location. And so how do we move something forward? So I just want to show, I'll flip through these really quickly, some pictures of the space. It's all the glass front up there. So it looks like this on the inside. When we first went in there, we absolutely loved it. It's just gorgeous. It has views of the airfield. It has views of downtown. And so as a quick, just kind of wrap up before I hand it off to the students, as I say, we reached out to them for a different perspective, for the ability to look at our problem from the outside in and to tell us what we weren't thinking about, what we were missing, help us stop banging our heads against the wall with this challenge. And we're so absolutely delighted with what they came back to us with. They took our initial ideas and they turned it on its head. And they said, what if you did something completely different? They were immensely thorough and they were positive. They were a joy to work with, and we're so, so happy with the final outcome. So with that, I'll turn it over to student group.
Hello. Hello. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up to Innovation Sprint Showcase tonight. My name is Paulina. And in the last 2 quarters, we've worked pretty hard on this project, and those are the results of our work.
So we were assigned, like Kim just said, assigned to find a business to fit into a beautiful space that are 5,000 square feet, search footage, and with a beautiful view of the airport. So I'll just repeat it real quick. So it's around 10-minute drive from downtown, 20-minute by trolley, 10-minute walk from a trolley station, very close and barely good with transportation. And it's on the 2nd floor of the rental car center. So when we first communicated with the airport team, there are a few metrics that they're looking for. Good revenue, originality of ideas, connection to the San Diego community, and high customer turnover. So with that in mind, we have come up with a few ideas during our brainstorming sessions.
So those are the ideas that we came up with. We categorized them, then how we like them. So some of the ideas that we have, some of the ideas that we like is Air Tour Team Arcade, Gym and Yoga Studios. Some of the ideas that we're kind of unsure of includes roller skating and office space. But we also had some crazy ideas, as you guys see, like dispensary or casino. So out of all of those ideas, we distinguish our top 5. This includes community space, spa and massage, airplane themed store, pet cafe, and tech-oriented concept store. So after we have our ideas, we decided to go to the field and ask the passengers who would be the customers of this space and ask them about their opinions. So those are the demographics of all the passengers that we've interviewed. So most of them liked most community space with food trucks. And this is the screenshot of the survey that we've did. However, in the end, we've decided to go with something completely different, some things that the passengers themselves told us to do. So we've distinguished 2 the typical passengers persona that are on the airport. First of them is business person. He is usually a man from 30s to 50s. He's there on weekdays, and he just sits with laptop and does his work. Second is vacation family. They're there on the weekends, and they're there to just see Legoland and Disneyland. So we've decided to address the needs of typical passengers. First, we've decided to address the needs of business person and just give them the place to sit with a nice view and Wi-Fi. And for vacation family, we've decided that if kid would want to go there, then a parent probably as well. So we've decided to do stores with local San Diego businesses. And those are some quotes from our passengers themselves. It includes, I just want to get out of there, about rental car center. And I want something that represents the local community. So that's what we decided to deliver. We've decided to do pop-up stands featuring local artists, pop-up stores featuring local San Diego businesses, and food truck with sitting area.
So in terms of pop-up stores, we came up with a few ideas. This is one of our first examples. It's kind of like your typical farmer's market stand. And the pros is that we have huge variety if we implement such stores, and it's smaller, and the rent is much affordable for local vendors. And the cons are it might be a little too crowded and less revenue in terms of leasing. Second pop-up store idea we had is kind of this European style with very aesthetically pleasing and potentially higher revenue. And the cons could be that it could be less for variety and it might be a little exclusive because of this very high-end looking thing. So we were like, okay, why not have both? So we can have a bit of that and a bit of a local community kind of feeling. So we decided to put 6 high revenue permanent store like our example 2 and 6 local stores like our example 1 into the space. And the pros and cons are that we can have a huge variety and appealing to different target audience. And the cons could be that the space would be a little limited and it might be less aesthetically, but it would feature a very diverse culture of our San Diego community.
So this is the design of the space that we came up with. Some of the passengers told us that they would like to see some like more green, more plants at the airport. So that's why for those passengers, we decided to design a green wall over there. Also, we've decided to go with hardwood floors just to get like a little bit touch of familiarity to the space. And of course, a food truck. So this is the 3D model that we came up with. In the back, they're permanent stores. In the middle, we have stands. And by the window, we have sitting area. This is the view of the space from the top. As you guys see, there we have permanent stores. And on the left, there would be bathroom. And on the right, there would be a food truck area.
So how much would it cost? So we did a little bit of our own due diligence, and it would be around 1.5 million from after we look into our research. And this is kind of like the breakdown. We have a more detailed sheet linked in a spreadsheet if anyone's interested. And in terms of revenue, we identified 3 main revenue streams. First of all is royalty. A royalty will usually the airport contract, it will include a 10% revenue sharing with the stores. So that's one of our revenue streams. Secondly, it's rent revenue, which is the monthly income that every store have to pay, monthly rent. And third, we have advertisements, so which include elevator wrap, digital board, and these are the 3 main revenue streams. For the cost, we identified 3 main costs as well. General, which is day-to-day operation, electricity, utilities, Wi-Fi, general maintenance. And secondly, we have depreciation as one of the main costs in the first 10 years. As I mentioned, the 1.5 million renovation costs would be depreciated over the next 10 years. So it's around that. And marketing, of course, which would be around 7 to 8% of our revenues in order to kind of broadcast this space and make sure that everyone knows about it. So we did a little spreadsheet projecting the 10-year revenue into the future. And that's some of our assumptions. So we're assuming our revenue will grow like 3 to 4%. And because of inflation, we're thinking the next few years are about 5%. And yeah, so 6 years, we'll get positive cash flow, 10 years, we'll break even. So in terms of what this place should feel like, if anyone been to Liberty Public Market, this is what we're kind of trying to bring in the airport. We want to have local stores, we want to have food, and we want a place for people to relax, but also see something new as they pass by. So, so far we have kind of informed plan, but in order to make this plan actually happen, we believe that we need more field survey, more cost analysis, and reach out to potential renter and see if this is something that they would like. Reach out to the airport team to see if this plan is something that they're excited about and that fits with kind of the general target of the airport. And lastly, we will look into similar case studies.
Once again, thank you so much for showing up to Innovation Sprint Showcase tonight. We hope you like our presentation and feel free to ask any questions. Thank you.
What is the one thing you learned from this experience?
We've honestly actually talked about this like literally 5 minutes before we started presentation. So what we both think is that we probably learned mostly something about like team working, how to communicate in a team, how to listen to each other's ideas, and how to get to the compromise. It was really just like educating, like to work in a team and just like find a good compromise that would also be like good for like airport and for everybody.
Yeah, kind of echo on that point. Also to kind of know that you might have an idea in mind at first, but you have to really be out there and asking your customer and all the stakeholders in mind what they really want, and be able to accept that answer, which might not be what you wanted, and be able to work toward that. I think it's really important experience from that. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions?
Any questions?
I guess so you maybe haven't spoken to anyone, but what do you think, like how willing?
Oh yeah. So the question is, since we haven't really reached out to any potential renters, we're wondering if the person's wondering if anyone would really want to rent a space there. So I think that one of the advantage that the space is right next to the rental car center. So a lot of passenger passing by. We actually went there during the weekday. It is very busy. And the second advantage is the proximity to downtown. So it's about like 10 to 20-minute walk from Little Italy. And we think that there are a lot of potential as long as we can it's kind of like this networking effect. If you can have people there, then the stores would be there. If the stores are there, then the people would be there. So I think if we could actually promote this space well, and have that integrated aspect of local businesses. So we're thinking of putting like we could have San Diego Zoo store there, kind of like SeaWorld and everything, and then we'll have local businesses. So I think that too would kind of draw different audiences and would be really helpful.
And also to just like build up on what Kai said, in the plan that we came up with, we like researched the typical prices of the rent like in San Diego, and we came up with a pretty good price. So I think it would be very attractive for different vendors to have a stand there. Yes. So fortunately didn't have the space to show you guys all the research that we've done, but we came up with a pretty extensive and pretty detailed plan to build up the space to the code.
Yeah, so kind of like the 1.5 million is kind of including all the construction HVAC system. So yeah, they are included. Yeah. Okay, so our times is up, and thank you everyone for your attention.
Great. Thank you, airport team. Great presentation. And up next, we have our radical science partners.
Oh, sure. Thanks. Hey guys, this is Paylene Thorogood. I'm a co-founder and exec chair of Radical Science. I'm also proud trustee and treasurer of the UC San Diego Foundation and get to serve on the executive board of the Basement. So all good, great stuff. So let's talk about our, and Varun is going to introduce himself. He's a UC San Diego grad student through and through, but you guys are going to hear about him directly. So what are we and what do we do and exactly what we're working on with the Innovation Sprints program. So Radical Science is an AI-driven health tech company that is generating the first of its kind data to prove and predict the health effects of over-the-counter, natural products, health and wellness products, things like CBD, microbiome interventions, functional mushrooms, and things like that, stuff that we don't know if they work. And our goal is to transform them into democratized precision solutions. So consumers know how to trust these products, so that doctors know when to prescribe them for which condition, so that insurance companies can actually use them. So that's our goal. In terms of what we do as a company, we collect data from thousands of consumers about how they use these products. and we aggregate them so that we can analyze them using data science to make sense out of it. And leveraging those insights, we actually drive decisions both on businesses using these products as well as consumers who are making better health decisions. And we started this company in the middle of COVID. So our company is about 1.5 years old, and we've done a lot thus far. We work with tens of thousands of consumers to date. We work with dozens of brands and validated them. And we have millions of data points. So a lot has happened in our little company, which is about 25 people or so right now, with over 1/4 of the company UC San Diego graduates. So I'm very proud of that. Varun is one of them.
Hello. So I'm Varun. Like Pauline mentioned, I was a student at UCSD. I got my undergrad and my master's at UCSD. So I'm very excited to be a part of leading the students here at the UCSD Innovation Sprint. Wearables, that's what the project is about. And like Pauline was talking about it, we run our own clinical trials. And we collect patient-reported outcomes via validated questionnaires. That's just one data source. And we have the patient's health history as well as wearables that we can collect data from. So this is really valuable data that we can use to get more holistic view of the patient's health, as well as get deeper insights. One of the key measures that we measure is sleep quality, and that's what the project was about. So the goal of the UCSD Innovation Sprint was to make a deployable proof of concept that collects and analyzes wearable data relating to sleep. This goal is broken down into 4 steps. The first is researching all the different platforms out there, figuring out what the advantages and disadvantages are to work with these different platforms, and ultimately recommending what the best platform is to work with. Building the software needed to collect and analyze is the next step. Step 3 is deploying and testing the POC and integrating it with Radical's current tech. And finally, performing some initial analysis was the last step. With this, I'm going to hand over to Kabir and Tim.
Thank you, Pauline and Varun, for that introduction. So my name is Tim. I'm a 5th-year PhD student actually studying the role of sleep in memory consolidation. And then this is my teammate.
I'm a 1st year at UCSD.
So yeah, as Varun mentioned, the first sort of goal of our project was to figure out which wearable device would be the best to use, at least when we're starting up and conducting a test study. Eventually, we would like to use all these devices, but for now, we can only use very few. So as I'm sure you're aware of, a lot of these devices have recently ramped up their ability to track your sleep. So if you have a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, these pictures are what you might see on your phone app. So for example, Apple Watch will tell you how long you've been in bed, how long you've been asleep, and things like that. Whereas Fitbit and this Oura Ring provide a little bit more detail on what stage of sleep you're in. So there are like REM sleep or non-REM sleep and things like that. And so first we analyzed what kind of data we can get from these devices. So here we have the 3 devices on as the rows, and then different types of sleep data they provide. So Oura Ring provides the most advanced or comprehensive sleep data, whereas Fitbit and Apple Watch are a little bit more limited. Yeah.
Yes, so Tim mentioned one of the first things that we did was make a recommendation to Radical Science which device to use. And you can see Apple Watch, it dominates the market with about 50% of the market share, but it has advanced sleep tracking capabilities. And it's also one of the more expensive options with most models over $300. Okay. The second option was Fitbit. And even though they have a lower percentage of the market share, they have more advanced sleep tracking capabilities and are generally cheaper than both the Apple Watch and the Oura Ring. And then finally, the Oura Ring is the least predominant in terms of market share, but it also has the most advanced sleep capability. But the downside is that it's also very expensive, with models between Okay, so in the end, we decided to go with Fitbit because even though it has a lower percentage of the market share, it have pretty good sleep tracking capabilities. Lower it. Okay. Better. No. And then, yeah, so it provides best tracking for the cost for its cost effectiveness. And it's also pretty development friendly. So when we were developing the app, we found that Fitbit's authentication protocols and API were pretty easy to work with. So I'll just go over the software because this is what we spent the bulk of the innovation sprint doing, was developing the software to integrate with the device. So I built a front end using Flask, which is a Python web framework, and that allows users to authorize Fitbit to share their health data. And as you can see, like in that corner over there, that's the screen that a user would see, and they can check the boxes for the health data they're comfortable sharing. And then Tim built a backend to make API calls, which basically means like requesting Fitbit for the user's health data. And then the backend also processes the data. And then finally, the whole application is stored on the AWS Elastic Compute Cloud, and that provides for secure data storage and then the option to scale when we add more users. And then I'll just briefly go through the system architecture. I should mention that this whole project is kind of being integrated with Radical's existing surveys and patient-reported outcomes. So when I think they're doing a study, the user has an option to participate in the Wearable study, and they're redirected to the front-end web application. They authorize their data, and then that generates access tokens. And using those access tokens, we can access their health data from the Fitbit API. And then just next one. Yeah, then the whole thing, like I said, is stored on the cloud. And basically all you need to know is that since this is health data, it needs to be kept private for user privacy. So all of the information is stored on a private server, and the only thing that's publicly visible is the front end. Yeah.
So yeah, now that we have the capabilities to collect data from these devices, from at least the Fitbit, we wanted to conduct a test study with the first aim of just testing that our application is able to collect data. And the second aim is to see if we could measure some sort of correlation between the data Fitbit provides and the data the users report in these surveys. So to do this, we had a study with 4 users, Kabir and I, and then 2 from Radical Science. And they would fill out this survey on day 1, which first asks them if they have a Fitbit. Then they fill out a sleep questionnaire with 8 questions measuring the quality of their sleep. And then after they do that, it would take them to Fitbit to authorize us to collect data from their device. So here is some summary data for a single participant. So you can see that we collect information on the amount of time they're asleep, which is the black bar, and that's averaged over the 10-day trial. And then even more interesting data on their sleep, this time they spent in various sleep stages. So REM sleep, deep sleep, the time they're awake over the course of the night, and so on. So yeah, we confirmed the first goal that we're able to collect data from these devices, which was pretty cool. And then the second thing we wanted to do is see if we could use Fitbit as a replacement for these patient-reported outcome surveys to make it easier for a patient to participate in these trials. And so we don't have a lot of data, but this is the type of thing we would want to do in the future. So here we're looking at on the left graph at sleep efficiency, which is measured as the percent of time you're in bed that you are asleep. So the higher your sleep efficiency, the more you're getting, or the more time you're spending asleep in bed. And so you can see that the patient who had, or the person who had the worst reported sleep quality also had the lowest sleep efficiency. So there could be something interesting here. And lastly, so these wearables aren't just for measuring sleep data. We can also measure other things that radical science is interested in, such as pain and anxiety, by measuring activity, so how many steps you take, what your heart rate is doing over the course of a day, and things like that. So then lastly, I'll just leave this up here, but would want to point out that both Kabir and I are planning on doing an internship over the summer with Radical Science, and hopefully we'll be able to run a larger trial with more people to get more data, and then also scale up and build an application for the Apple Watch. So thank you for listening, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Otherwise, you would have to buy them for each person that you collect data from. But if it's the case that you're doing it on people where you have it, Fitbit, then there's a potential for sampling bias where you're only sampling people with, right? Can you repeat the question so they don't mix it?
Yeah, so I think part one of the question is, would we be providing these devices to people or only be using, recruiting people who have these devices? And that was something we talked about a lot in the first part of the challenge. But for now, I think we settled on recruiting people who have a Fitbit or hopefully in the future an Apple Watch, just because it would be very expensive to provide a device for every participant. And then the second part of your question, I think, was, would that result in some sort of sampling bias? And I think generally, I mean, a lot of people have these types of devices right now, like Apple Watches. So I think we're getting like a general enough sample of the population that there wouldn't really be anything too unique about the group of people who wear these devices.
So why see potentially have the people who already have Fitbit or the people who have
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think, so the outcomes we're interested in, like how well you're sleeping, anxiety, pain, things like that. I think you can design a study to sort of get around that. So for example, if you have this product that is advertised as helping you sleep, you can have a period of the trial where you're not taking the product and Fitbit is recording your sleep. And then after, you could have a period where you are taking the trial and then see the change during in the same participant over the course of time. So there are ways to get around sort of those sampling biases.
So I have another question from the audience on Zoom. Questions. Have you looked at AMCEE smartwatch? It has apparently a 4-week battery life. It costs $50.
We have not, but we will look into it. Oh yeah, the question was, have we looked into a Amazfit wearable? And we have not looked into that. Like we said, these were the 3 primary ones because they're the most predominant, but that is something we can look into for sure. I think our time's up, but.
Thank you.
All right, congratulations to the presenters. And up next, we have our San Diego Zoo partners. We have Jessica and Luisa. It's nice to see you again.
Yay. All right. Nice to be here. Nice to see Anne. Anne was one of our student interns last year who worked on a project that's coming up. We actually have 3 challenges that we put out. So you'll see us 3 times tonight. The first one that we put out is our Arboreal feeding challenge. So we have a lot of animals at the zoo and the park. I should say, first of all, our Wildlife Alliance, we have the zoo and the park under our umbrella, as well as a lot of conservation sites around the world. And one of the challenges that we work with is how to feed animals in a way that they can elicit and display their natural behaviors. So a lot of our animals live up high, they live in the trees, but it's really, really hard for us to get the food up there. One of the reasons is because OSHA requirements, so our Occupational Safety and Health Agency requires that if you work above 8 feet, you have to be in a harness strapped in. So you can imagine doing all of that training, making sure each individual wildlife care staff has that training, the ability to do that in every instance is just not feasible. Another hurdle is the equipment. So in order to get food up high, you might need a ladder that's 8 or 10 feet. It's really, really hard to get that into most of the habitats that we have at the zoo or the park. We have a lot of animals that live in this kind of upper stratosphere, from binturongs to hyrax, to a lot of our kind of smaller old and new world monkeys. So our group today has focused on Francois Langurs, which are a non-human primate that spends a lot of time up in the trees because they primarily only eat leaves. That's really the only diet item that they eat. And the reason why we really want them to eat up high is because we want them to meet both the physical and cognitive challenges. So if you can imagine, we have habitats that maybe are 25 feet high, but if we can only feed them up to 8 feet, then there's a lot of space that we're really, really not using that we want to get to. And so in the world of zoos and aquariums, we're really good at being innovative because we work a lot with not a lot of money and not a lot of experience. So we've tried to figure out different ways to incorporate these sort of feeding strategies, but you know, every habitat is different, every animal is different. So this group of students really took on this challenge in this one habitat and came up with a lot of really innovative designs that potentially could have a lot of value, not only to San Diego Zoo, but potentially to institutions all over the US and all over the world. So I'm very happy to hand it over to the students at this point.
Right here is good, right? This is good. All right, so we are the Arboreal feeding design team. My name is Mega.
My name is Jean.
And my name is Stephanie.
So you just heard about our challenge. And the great thing about this challenge is that we were allowed to pick which species we wanted to work with, which meant that we could tailor our design and our product to the actual environment in a way that we thought was best. Our agenda for today is just to talk about why we picked Langurs, then the product requirements, the design process, and the application in the future moving forward. Why did we pick Langurs? The reason why we chose this specific enclosure and species is because we could incorporate a lot of enrichment into the design, and the existing system could be modified if we would wanted to, and we had a clear problem and requirements. The specific enclosure had such clear design flaws and possible improvements that we could build off of these. The existing feeder was a single pulley system. The height, as was mentioned, was lower than required. And the Langurs, since they cluster at the top of the tree, it was a little harder to feed them at the height that was required. There was a decent amount of accessibility and cleaning, but it wasn't sustainable for the long term. These are just some of the food requirements. There's monkey biscuits, browse, which are a type of leaves, and seeds and nuts. So the product requirements, there were 4 important elements. The first one was that we needed to have something that was a very high height. The second was to incorporate a lot of enrichment. The third was to make sure that our design was weatherproof, so that's pest proof as well. And the fourth was to make it very accessible to the caretakers. Our design process had 2 steps. First was we created pulley systems based on our initial requirements, but then about 3 weeks ago, we were asked to reroute in order to meet new product demands. To talk about our design, here's Jing and Stephanie.
This is my first design of pulley maze. The pulley system was inspired from the bungee jump I saw in the mall, and which the kid can be brought down to the floor and then bring up to the sky. And the maze was composed by a wooden box with transparent platform in the front with holes on them, so that the monkey can use wooden stick to push the food out of the acid and play with it. However, this feeder doesn't work with all variety of food types. And next, I have the pulley line system. It's inspired from the cloth line we used to have in our house. And then it has 2 pulleys attached to the roof, which can be put up and down the whole rod across the habitat. The zookeeper can pick which hook they we would put the browsers on. However, the hook also caused problem for the monkey because of the danger.
This was my first design, a harness system, and it includes a harness inspired from like a zip line and a retractable rope inspired by these outlets that you can see in various project spaces. When you combine those two and attach a bowl at the bottom, and underneath that bowl, you have a rope, you can have zookeepers pull that rope down to refill that bowl with food. And the harness would be clipped to some of the ropes that the exhibit already has.
So even though we gave a few of these project ideas, we had a few more that we didn't include in this presentation. We were asked to actually reroute and create something that was a little bit more natural looking. And we were also asked to try to avoid using a pulley system and make something that was a little bit non-electric, because installing an outlet in the enclosure could be dangerous, especially with the way that the langurs interact with their environment. So this did affect our project. And the reason why we included this is because it made us think about the feasibility about creating an actual prototype within such a short space. Our initial goal was to actually create a miniature version so that we could demonstrate whether or not it worked. But given the fact that we had to reroute, we went back and approached it from a design-centric perspective and decided to just focus on our actual design and make it as adaptable as possible. One of the first designs that we thought of was a Plinko treat. It's inspired by the popular game in which you would pull the food box up to the top and essentially have it fall down within a tree-like structure and then escape from a certain branch, which the langurs would just climb up to reach the food. Of course, this idea, it's a little hard to get the food and bring it down, but we gave it a shot. Then we thought about doing a pulley tree. Now, I know we said we were trying to avoid pulleys, but the reason why we did this is because it was inspired by the idea of pulling water from a well. You pull the box over the top and lower it to the height that you would like it to be at, which means that, again, you have that variability and easy accessibility on both the end of the langurs and the wildlife care staff. However, we ended up thinking of a third option that was completely different.
It's a gear tree that designed inspired from the tank track. It's like a vertical tank track where the food platform can be attached to the track and then move like a Ferris wheel. And then the zookeeper, by turning the handle at the bottom for the gear, the whole track will move along the inside of the tree trunk. And then the monkey will be able to get the fruit from each tree branches. And the zookeeper will be able to clean up the leftover food once the Ferris wheel go one turn, and then it will drop down to the plate at the bottom.
We ended up with a completely different final idea, actually inspired by one of our previous designs. And we decided on doing this because it would allow us to have a short-term success in the current enclosure.
Yes, this is the harness system version 2, which built off of the first version of the harness system, except this one was made more monkey-proof, more weatherproof, and also added some enrichment aspects. So as you can see, the harness is now surrounded by a box, which can be created out of acrylic. And on top of that box would be a solar panel that toggles the retractable rope to make sure that the monkeys don't accidentally pull that down and maybe get their fingers caught in it or something. Additionally, the rope can be customized with different add-ons that will allow the monkeys to play with maybe a ladder or a chute. And all of these could be mixed and matched with various harness systems around the enclosure to make sure that the monkeys are always given a new habitat that they can play with. And the final add-on is that the entire system would be held to a clasp on the ground to make sure the zip line aspect doesn't move along the rope too much and, again, potentially hurt the langurs.
So in terms of what we're going with for the future, we decided to expand on our gear tree idea so that we could use it in various other enclosures at the zoo, potentially. The modifications that we made were suggested by the actual our partners at the zoo, and it was to add a clockwork element in which the keepers would be able to add the food at whatever level and then turn the dial like a clock so that the food would basically shift throughout the day. So whatever time of day it is, the langurs would be able to climb up, or whatever species would be able to climb up and still have that interactive element as if they were foraging for food or trying to get their food at a different height. And we thought of some materials that we could use. We thought we could use something like bamboo or PVC because they're easily malleable, but also quite durable and waterproof. And then we just have to keep working. So we've designed it in such a way that we can adapt for the future and try to figure out for other habitats. Thank you. Yeah, so the question is if this can be implemented for other monkeys or other habitats like that. So that's why we designed a long-term goal as well. The first design that we had, which was the harness system, is for implementing in the Langurs habitat in the short term, but we designed the gear tree so that we could adapt to other environments because we could change the scale and the mechanisms on the food. The question was, since the gear tree looks to be rather large, what's our plan for the flexibility of the space? Is it going to take up a lot of the space? So we were planning on implementing the gear tree in a larger habitat, which would mean that we would be able to have a little bit more leeway. But if it was to be implemented in the Langurs habitat, we could actually adjust the size to our requirements, because obviously we would need dimensions of the space that we want to adapt to. Okay, so if we could do this project over, what would you do differently? I'm sure do you guys have any ideas? I think we would go back to the start and do it completely differently, in my opinion. I think that when we approached it with this idea of building, we want a prototype, I think we jumped a few steps here and there. And when we were asked to reroute, it made us go back to a more design-centric, a more adaptable, and a little bit more creative, honestly. We were a lot more creative the second time around, which I think was a nice experience. It was a little nerve-wracking when we were asked to start from scratch. But once we did it, I personally like our ideas the second time around. Do you have any answers? Yeah, there you go.
Sure. I feel like the way I approached the Innovation Sprint program at the beginning and at the end of the 14-week period was rather different. And because of that, if I had to do this program again, I would probably go, as Mega mentioned, go towards it with a more design-centric approach. We started off like incredibly ambitious, and because of that, because of the pitfalls that we encountered, it was very easy for us to become demotivated. And I feel like being more humble about our ability to complete this assignment would have been a good approach. I'm good. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you for the presentation. And up next, we have our partner RunBuggy. We have Patrick coming up to present.
Hello, everybody. My name is Pat Weincombe, Head of Data Science at RunBuggy. In the background of this picture, you can see a car hauler, a truck, typically what you see on the road, plus a cell phone. So kind of is a clue to what we do, which is we're bringing technology to the automotive transportation space. You can say we're digitizing transportation. What RunBuggy does is some mixture between Airbnb and Uber. So it's like Airbnb in that it's a digital marketplace where we have these companies that own trucks, and they have these assets which they're renting out spots on to shippers. And those shippers can be anyone from big OEMs like Toyota, or there's a lot of infrastructure behind the automotive marketplace, like dealers and auctions and that type of thing, and used car dealerships. And then there's also, online car sales like the Carvans and the Shifts, and those are the kind of the next wave of car sales platforms. And so very similarly to before there was Lyft and Uber, the automotive transportation space is very fragmented. You have a bunch of small companies that kind of work independently. Some of them are very small and only are like one person who owns one truck, and some of them, maybe they own 20 trucks, but it's very fragmented. As a whole, you can see here, $35 billion market. So it's a huge marketplace, automotive transportation. And what we've built is basically a digital marketplace and an enterprise software. So we kind of work with these big companies, integrate into their software systems. And then we provide an app for the truck drivers so they can move the trucks, they can get paid right away, like Venmo. We float them that money. They can do take pictures of the cars that they're shipping, and kind of do the inspections. So it makes their lives much easier. This is like I said, it's a huge marketplace. The automotive transportation network really is. Most people don't realize how much cars are actually moved before you buy them. They might be moved like 7, 8 times. You ever try to move a car yourself, which you probably haven't because most people don't. It's a very difficult process. You might have to call a person, that person calls another person, that person faxes somebody else, and then maybe you hear where your car is. So we're kind of bringing in this kind of like an Amazon experience where you can get more up-to-date information about your car. And then using this technology, really what we want to do on a bigger scale is fill up these trucks. You hear about these problems with supply chain. A lot of that is simply we're not using our resources very effectively. You have trucks going out half empty, coming back half empty, or going out full, coming back empty. And so, what we're doing with this project is, how do you solve that problem, right? When you have that problem, truck drivers don't get paid enough because they only get paid for what they ship. We're wasting a lot of CO2 and gas. So first step in this project, which is basically what the students were working on, data transparency and metrics. You can't fix a problem if you can't measure it and see it, right? And then we gave them some data from algorithms that we have for kind of getting all these cars onto trucks and filling them up, kind of like Uber Pool, where you're bringing multiple different orders into one truck. And then, you have to be able to scale this digital marketplace. If you have a bunch of small companies, they're not going to be able to put an impact in the environmental issues there. So, why this project? Myself and another data scientist, we were grad students here at UCSD, so it's good to be back. And data science, most new companies now are doing data science. It's very much the future, but there's also at the same time not that many opportunities to interact with data science in industry settings. So, we were paying it forward in that respect. And sustainability, trying to get more people thinking about that is also very important. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ethan from and Kaiki from the student team.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ethan, and
hi, my name is Kaiki. We are both undergrads here at UC San Diego, and we're happy to present the RunBuggy challenge.
yeah, so today we're going to be presenting our project for RunBuggy, which is a automotive transportation digital marketplace, as Patrick said. So our main goal today is to reduce carbon emissions into the atmosphere through machine learning. So for our proposal, we were given 3 data sets from RunBuggy. The first data set was the orders data set, the drivers data set, as well as the clustering data set. So our goal here is to create a framework to calculate the impact of empty spots in automotive shipping on the environment. As you can see, from the map, there are a lot of routes, and there are a lot of redundant routes that need to be maximally made more efficient. And as you can see, there are a lot of routes that are located to the same place. And this is what we were planning to fix through grouping. So our main solution is of our process is that RunBuggy clusters orders based on its pickup and delivery locations. So what this means is that in Texas, all these delivery and pickup routes are part of one order cluster. And this is what allows us to minimize redundant routes and create the best possible route for efficiency. As I said before, we were given 3 data sets, the orders data set, drivers data set, and clusters data set. And we combined all of these data into one data frame using the programming language Python, as well as other data science libraries such as NumPy and Pandas. And how we got to this data frame is that with the orders and drivers, we had to do a lot of data cleaning. So for instance, the zip codes were in float and we had to convert it to a string. A lot of the data we had to convert into Booleans, as well as some of the columns didn't make sense. For instance, truck capacity, there were capacities where it would be like 1, and that didn't make sense. So we had to conduct data imputation. Yeah, to create this this data frame, we merged orders and drivers on driver ID. And with that resulting data frame, we also conducted another inner join with clusters on transportation order number. And lastly, before we need to create our model, we actually have to calculate the CO2 that is emitted from each order. So we use this formula using distance, truck weight, number of trucks per order to calculate the estimated CO2 per delivery. And after this, we are able to create our model, our classification model. And this is what Kaiki will be explaining next.
So after we calculate the CO2, we need to find a way to classify into good and bad routes. We use a very direct measurement of the 25% most efficient routes of CO2 emission per empty spot, where the empty spot is a place where you can place an average car. And that correlates to around 19.87 kilograms per empty spot. Using k-nearest neighbors with grid cross validation, we got an accuracy of 96.35%. You can see on the confusion matrix, that's the name of that fancy graph, the diagonal there. There are only 10 misclassifications over our test data set, which is impressive considering all of that. So after that, well, it's really cool that we can actually measure and predict if an order will be, if the 25% most efficient or not. But we need to find a way to quantify that. We need to find a way to demonstrate to the public what is that. So we turn over to trees. We know that an average tree can absorb around 21 kilograms of CO2 per year. And we divided that by the total emission using that horrible formula there. And you get this nice graph here. As you can see, that's a linear graph. The average is 8.2, roughly 8 trees per whole truck delivery. So that's a lot, as you can consider. And there are some that will go over 240. So using that data, what are the next steps? What we can do with that? One idea is to create a system to inform the consumer about CO2 footprint. We realized that on the flight ticketing industry, there are already some solutions like that. This is the Google flight. And you can see that, for example, the first flight there you book, you know how much CO2 you'll be contributing to the environment and how you can offset that. There are services that you can hire to offset that. And how efficient it is compared to the average. So since we have both these informations, we can make that firm decision. The next thing we can do is to use the geographical patterns to improve prediction. And what is that? You realize here, we realize that over visualization that some transporters, they only operate in a very limited area. So maybe we can use the system from RunBuggy to limit what orders those transporters can get and how they can operate in order to optimize their operations and consequently the amount of CO2 that's being emitted to the environment. So that was our presentation. We'd like to thank all my teammates, Alan, Ethan, and Christopher, who's unfortunately not here, and also the people at RunBuggy. And we are open to questions from the audience.
So practically, when you're optimizing this, like the whole crop thing, do you think it would be good to consider not only CO2 emission, but also cost?
Yeah, so I believe the question was that if, say that we have, like, you know how the flights contain our CO2 data, he's asking if, I believe,
So it contains the CO2 data, and we know the airplanes have motors that are non-spec. But the thing is, we have to change the mentality of the general population, because it's not only about economics, it's about the planet we live in. Our resources are finite, our planet. So we must also consider that. It's a point of changing the system of the whole society. And that's, I think, one of the master goals of this project as well.
And also, I believe that we're not just looking at the cost of, the transportation services, but our main goal here was to find ways to reduce CO2 emissions.
I do have a question for you. What was the biggest challenge you have to overcome? So the question from the Zoom chat, what was the biggest challenge we have to overcome? At least on my end, I think it was to be able to find a reliable way to calculate all of those CO2 and also to aggregate the data. That was really hard and was a great challenge that we overcome. I'm quite happy with that. And what about you, Ethan?
Yeah, so for my challenges, I think the hardest part was kind of trying to figure out what to do next. So in the beginning, we were only given 3 data sets, and we were tasked with finding ways to reduce CO2. But when you're given company data like with thousands of entries, it's kind of hard to figure out what to do with that data. So after cleaning and kind of analyzing the data, we decided to create a classifier, which is what we ultimately did, and it went all well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and good job to our RunBuggy team. And next up, we have the San Diego Zoo back with another project.
Hello again. Thanks, Anne. I neglected to say last time, I'm also here with my partner, Luisa Radosevich. So we're part of the Applied Wildlife Welfare Department at the zoo and the park. So basically what we do is we take current research and theory and we try to apply it to the care for the animals that are within our boundaries. And so we're doing a lot of innovation all the time. We're trying to push people to be innovative, to progress our industry all of the time. So this next challenge was our Zuber, or our machine learning challenge, and this dealt with the elephants at the San Diego Zoo. So just a quick introduction to our elephant herd. We have 3 female elephant sows that are geriatric. So we have both Asian and African elephants, which are not the same species and generally are not, would never be found in the same environment, but we do house them together. There's a lot of challenges that we have with foot health, joint health, and they can be housed in a 2-1 situation. So there's basically one elephant that gets along with the other 2, but then those other 2 don't get along with each other. And then the other contingent that we have there are 2 young male African elephants. So these are 2 young bulls that have formed basically a bachelor herd. And the challenge that we had was to try to see what our elephants are doing. So it might come as a surprise, but most of our wildlife care specialists have hardly any time to actually watch the wildlife that are in their care. So if you think about it, we go in, we shift the animals off habitat, we clean, we service, we feed, and then we shift them back on habitat, and then we go about our day. So we spend very, very little time watching what our animals are doing. And that's probably one of the most important indicators that we can use in order to determine their health, their welfare. So this challenge was to use machine learning in order to know what our elephants are doing during the day and the night. So we have a pretty complex camera system that we can fast forward through. We have a DVR, but obviously that takes time, that takes labor that we don't always have. And so this project actually was started last year by Anne and some of her fellow students, and they got a really good start at it. As you'll appreciate soon, it's a really complex project. There's a lot of face recognition that's done for humans, but not a lot for elephants. So they kind of started the project. This next group of students who you're going to hear from soon continued the project. There was a lot of different hurdles as far as being able to actually see the elephants at night. We have heaters, we have lights on at night. So there's a lot of different hurdles, but if we can get this up and going, hopefully the plan is to not only use it for elephants at the zoo, but again, around the world or for other animals. So we actually know what's happening at night, which a lot of times once animal care staff leave for the day, that's when we say animals actually really start to act like the animals that they are, because we're not interfering or having inputs into their life. So these students have done a really great job, and you guys ready to go? Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Jessica. Alrighty. Hello, everyone. We are the Zuber 2.0 team that conducted the machine learning project at the San Diego Zoo. We will go ahead and introduce ourselves. So, hi, I'm Connor McManigal. I'm a third-year cognitive science major.
I'm an environmental systems major.
I'm Juan Castillo, and I'm an electrical engineering major.
And I'm Laura Charria, cognitive science major.
So for this project, our goal was to find a way to integrate machine learning and computer vision in order to assist wildlife staff care, to monitorize and collect data about elephant behavior.
So within our problem statement, we had a more specific question, and that was, how can we monitor the elephants through video 24/7? Because as of right now, the video analysis is conducted manually, and it is very time consuming. In addition, the video resolution at night is pretty poor, not exactly what we were anticipating. Like Jessica mentioned, the specialists aren't on site 24/7, and so that was an additional issue that we faced. But our initial goal was to eliminate these tedious and repetitive tasks, and we considered how we might detect nighttime surveillance, abnormal behaviors, injuries and illness, and the individual elephants.
So this is just a quick breakdown between supervised and unsupervised learning. So for supervised learning, you are working with input and output data that has previously been labeled. And methods to this include convolutional neural networks and classification. For unsupervised learning, you would be working with data that has not been labeled. And a method to this would be called clustering. And our project falls under the supervised learning category.
So we started off the project by digging through the previous team's Google folder. And basically what we found was a YOLO v4 algorithm, and it was fully functioning. So for those of you that don't know, YOLO is an object recognition tool or a computer vision algorithm that identifies centroid objects. And basically YOLO stands for you only look once. And the current model that we looked at and discovered was trained on the Coco Names data set, which is a publicly available data set. And the algorithm efficiently tracked the distance walked, the duration of movement, and the duration without movement. And basically, you'll see on the upper right-hand side of the screen there, running the code generates what's called a GUI, or a graphical user interface. And then the user is then prompted to input a video MP4 file, the specific camera location or number, and the respective map of that staging area or yard.
All right, so moving on, we came up with 3 proposed solutions. The first one was to create a separate YOLO model for nighttime surveillance. The second one was to detect behaviors such as laying down and swaying. And then finally, the third one was to consider the elephant specialist input for their ideal outcome.
So during this project, we were able to go to the zoo to have meetings with the specialists. And during those meetings, we were able to analyze and find out the problems that needed improvement, which included improving the nighttime video and also integrate the nighttime with the daytime video surveillance and put them in the same systems, and also find a way to use video to analyze elephant behavior. And those behaviors included the swaying, the laying down, and how the elephants moved through the yards.
So when working with images that are taken in low light environments, there tends to be a grainy or pixelated look. And it's also harder to differentiate between objects that are farther away. Specifically in our project, we did notice that the heaters in the elephant habitat tend to overexpose the image, as you can see on the bottom left. And this makes it harder for us to determine where the elephant is actually located. And a solution to this would be using image processing to write code and alter the image so that it is more valuable to the algorithm when it is used as input. And essentially it removes noise, which is the overexposure or the grainy look. And it also makes the edges of the elephant more apparent in the image.
So in order to understand how to implement this complex issue of a nighttime model, we needed some outside assistance. And so that's exactly where Marcus came in. Marcus was the former vice president of engineering at Arlo Technologies. And for those of you that don't know what Arlo Technologies is, it's basically one of the top consumer electronics for security systems and security cameras. And so the advice that he offered us was to piggyback off the current model and continue with that. But that would require some extra steps, and that included using image processing, creating a custom data set, and retraining the model on that nighttime footage or that custom data set. Another piece of advice that he gave us was to separate the algorithms, one for the day and one for the night. And that would allow us to eventually put them together and have toggle functionality.
So the need for a custom yellow data set. Currently, the algorithm works with a data set named Coco. It is a data set that is available online to the public and contains 80 objects and around 30,000 images. And unfortunately, we need images that are taken in low light environments. So our proposed data set is to get images from the zoo surveillance, label them, and then we have to make sure to not overtrain the data.
So here are some guidelines that we found on creating a custom data set. There are two ways of doing this. You can either do it manually, which is very time consuming and meticulous, or you can do it through an image labeling system. And one such example that we have is RoboFlow. So the steps to this are you would screenshot and download 500 or more images off of the camera, the zoo cameras directly. And then from there, you would input it into this platform, RoboFlow. It would then label the images for you. The file would then be zipped and ready for download. You would download the file. And after that, you would finally insert the file name into the algorithm and it would read it appropriately.
All right, so after talking with the elephant care specialists, we decided to create this dashboard that we see right here. And it's in order to create a visual snapshot of the elephant's behavior, because one of the key problems that was over there was that there was no nighttime surveillance. And so, for example, right here, we can see Nepo, he's in yard 2, and we can see two key factors, the frequency and the duration. And we can also see some key metrics on the left.
And that's how our graph would look like for the data collected about the elephants laying down. On the bottom, we would have the time of the day. And on the y-axis, we would have the duration in minutes of the elephants laying down during that hour.
So for future directions, the following group would have to create the data set and apply the image processing, as well as make it so that it can be toggled between night and daytime. And more importantly, they would be able to, they would need to write the algorithm so that it can detect when the elephant is swaying back and forth. And lastly, they need to keep developing the dashboard.
So due to this project's complexity and short duration, many challenges were thrown at us, but we were ultimately able to accomplish a lot and lay a solid foundation for the next group to come through. And in doing so, to assist the continuation of this project, we have created an in-depth documentation of all our steps and everything that went into our process. And that includes the descriptions of the model's functionality, the research findings, our strategies, our recommendations, and where to take the project from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Did you look at motion capture as an option to either enhance or replace?
No, we have not. Oh yeah, sorry. The question was, sorry. Have we looked at motion capture to enhance the image? And our answer is no, we did not. So the question was, I'll try to restate it to my best ability, but we faced many challenges, and they mentioned that audio and infrared, right? That's what you said, could help enhance the image. So unfortunately, the cameras at the zoo are not infrared. And so this is on one of our slides, we can't go back, but yeah, you want to go back to the heat map one? You'll see on the right-hand side when he gets there that this right here. So it's hard to tell, especially probably from the back there, but you'll see there's a heat map projection. And so what the algorithm does once you run the code is it would produce a heat map. So that was one of our limitations, not having infrared cameras, and it's unfortunate, but it's pretty cool that something like this can do a heat map projection.
Another question for you. What did you take on this challenge? Quickly,
Yeah. So I think another one of our the question was, why did we take on this challenge? And I personally would say that I took on this challenge because I wanted to learn a lot more about machine learning, but I also have a passion for animals. And so I figured, why not combine them?
I took on this challenge because I had recently learned about image processing in one of my courses, and I finally wanted to apply it somewhere other than the classroom. And I felt like this was a great way to do it.
Ooh, I would say the 3 C's. So probably because of the community, because of the challenge, and also because of the creativity that you're able to implement.
So I took on this challenge because at that time I was still undeclared for my major and I wanted to explore new areas and also be more involved on campus. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Team Super. I'm so excited to see where you all took that project. I'm very, very happy that it'll continue in the future. All right, next up, we have our partners from Sandag. Please welcome Ava.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Eva Sanchez, and I'm a regional planner with the San Diego Association of Governments, or SANDAG. And SANDAG serves as the regional decision making forum for the San Diego region. So our board of directors is made up of elected officials from all of the 18 cities in the county and the county of San Diego. And so we not only plan, but we implement a wide variety of different projects from transit, bike, and highway improvement projects. We also offer a number of programs and services to help people travel sustainably. And then one of the most important things that we do is develop a long-range transportation plan. And so our regional plan is really a long-term blueprint for how we get around in the region. And this regional plan, we really focused on transit, active transportation like biking, and shared mobility in order for us to meet our federal and state climate targets. And so as we're starting to implement our regional plan, trying to encourage more people to use micromobility, so shared bikes and scooters. At the same time, there's also been a really rapid growth in the use of personal micromobility like e-bikes or personal scooters or things like hoverboards and a bunch of different emerging devices. The problem is that even though there's been growth, there's not enough secure places to park your micromobility devices. And so, you know, if there's not enough secure places, people are worried that they could be stolen or vandalized. And usually these e-bikes and newer devices are more expensive than your average bike. And so we've asked the students to pair secure, convenient micromobility parking in areas with bikeways in commercial destinations. So places where people want to go for their free time, places where people work or live. Oops. And so the reason that we partnered with the UC San Diego students is because we've partnered with them in the past. And we were really impressed with how creative they were. And I can, on behalf of the Sandbag team, we can say that the team did not disappoint. They were super creative. And in a short amount of time, they did a lot of research and were able to come up with some pretty creative solutions. So with that, I will hand it off to Sydney and Dylan.
So we're the team that work with Sandbag company, and we have this micromobility project. So here is our team, and I'm a first year UCSD student, and my name is Dylan.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I'm a second year business econ major.
And we have our third teammate, Abhinav, but he cannot be here. So to restate the problem statement, so because of more people are using micromobility, so micromobility are lightweight transportation for individual use. It's our items such as scooter, bikes, and e-bikes, and all that kind of transportation for individual. And because of growing numbers of people, we are worried about that because they are going to work at some place and they cannot store their bike securely. And so our question is, how can we design some kind of storage, or where should we put it to make people to use micromobility more and they feel safer? So to tackle this problem, we split our process into 4 main steps. And the first one is to do research. So to collect some of the existing data and to research about which place in San Diego we should place this micromobility storage. And after that, we will do some first-hand data. So we go out to do site visit and we do survey. And after that, we will make, based on the research and data, we'll make decisions. And at last, we create some of our own design and to solve this problem.
Okay, so one of the first steps that we did was research the socioeconomic benefits of micromobility, because we wouldn't be here if it didn't reap any benefits for the community. So some of the main points is that usage of micromobility has a higher health score benefit and lower greenhouse gas emissions than any other type of transportation. Also, micromobility users tend to spend more at local businesses than do people that go by car. So that can help businesses in the area. And we're already seeing a transition to micromobility within the US with a 15% substitution rate. So a lot of factors into this could be like the really high gas prices right now that no one wants to pay. And it's just economically more beneficial for the communities. So after doing that research, we also did some research on the potential corridors for our storage. And some of the points that we looked at was the main centers of interest within the community, the existing infrastructure, so bike lanes, bike racks, et cetera, and theft and crime rates. So some of the places we looked at was El Cajon, Chula Vista, Pacific Beach. And after this research, we decided on Hillcrest and Genesee Avenue. So we conducted site visits and surveys where we walked around with a Sandbag member and just kind of observed the area, get a feel and an understanding for each community and the existing behavior, and scouted out potential new locations. And then we went back to each location and surveyed a couple people, just kind of getting an understanding for the responsiveness to additional storage. So here is our survey results. It was small and not statistically significant, but we did get a better understanding of each community. We noticed that we have a pretty high responsiveness to usage of micromobility with additional storage. And then more on separate terms between the two communities, Hillcrest has a higher likelihood to use micromobility with additional storage and has a higher population that uses either does walking or uses bikes. And walking is a big factor because micromobility tends to replace walking.
So based on our research and data collection, we finally decide that we should choose Hillcrest as the corridor we want to focus on. So there are a few points that I want to point out. The first one is there are a lot of shop and restaurant and nearby, so you don't need to take a car to go through all Hillcrest, but just with bike, you can do all of that. And secondly is there are a fully separate bike lane. So because we noticed that some of the bike lanes are just beside the car, so people will not feel safe. People will not feel safe just to bike there. And because Hillcrest have a fully separated bike lane, it's a very good corridor that we should work on. And the third and fourth one is that there are already some of the storage, like such as bike racks, and we saw that there are a lot of empty space and there are potential upgrades to these corridors. And it is also like good for some of the our goals to fit some small compact storage, and Hillcrest is one of them. So to do our design, we mainly focus on 3 factors. And the first one is accessibility. So we want our storage to put on a public space so everyone can access it, and not just for company use. The second one is placemaking. So we want to make our design beautiful and welcoming so that the community are more likely to go there and to either do entertainment or just go there for work. And that's what we want to do. And the last one is because from our survey results, there are some participants that say that they are concerned about theft. So we want to provide some of the new storage that are more safer, and it will last longer. And so for our design, we have 2 that are existing that are provided by the companies for use, and we also have the last 2 design that we as a team created. So first one is the Alpine storage. So it is a capsule-like, and you can put 1 bike per capsule. And the location is that we noticed that there are some empty space between the bike lanes and the carways, and that space can exactly fit one capsule there. So we want to put a capsule there, and after that, we want to do some murals on the storage, so it is more aesthetically pleasing. And the cost is 10,000 per year that we estimate, and here are the dimensions. So the second ones are this mini bike tower, and as you can see, it's a cylinder shape, and it can fit totally for 14 bikes. And on the appearance, we try to make it more fit to the environment, so we want to put some plants and greens on it. And how does this thing work is it actually comes with a system that people can use, and once they use the system, they can the cylinder will automatically shift to an empty slot, and then you can put your bike in and pay for it, and after that it's inside the cylinder and it's safe. And for this bike tower, we want to put it in the Hillcrest Village, so anywhere in the plaza, and that's for this one. And the cost estimate is 22,000, and here is the dimension. And for the next one is our own design, and this I call it a umbrella design. So basically, it's an umbrella shape that has on the top it provides some of the shades, and on the bottom it is supported by 4 pillars, and each is attached with a metal piece. So when it's closed, it's just as like a pillar. And when it is open, you can actually extend it and you put your bike on it. And then after you lock your bike, you will lift it up to the top so it doesn't block the sideway. So actually it can, so the location for this kind of design is along the sideway. And for this, I estimate that it has $16,000. And here are the dimensions.
So our last design is this covered bench. We are hoping that it'll go into Hillcrest Village and it costs around $55,000. Just some final thoughts. We're hoping to promote the switch to micromobility, create a place for the community to come together, and also encourage lowering our carbon footprint to help the environment. So that's our presentation. Thank you so much.
So I noticed that a lot of the examples are like hidden, like the ones that stuff around it, or like the pod. And I don't know like the effects of the bike being hidden or not, because when you have the bike in plain view, a lot of people just be like, oh look, there's so many other people storing their bikes here. There's so many other like maybe I should use bike. Versus if you keep it hidden, or like what's that? I don't even know what.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, sorry. I'll repeat the question. So the question was, a lot of the storage designs that we created were kind of hiding all the types of micromobility. So how will that be beneficial in promoting micromobility? So one of the big things about this challenge was secureness and theft. So by hiding the storage in a way that it'll keep it out of sight for potential theft and burglary of these micromobilities, since a lot of them are since a lot of new micromobility is very expensive with the new personal e-bikes, e-scooters. A lot of people are scared of that kind of being stolen. But in a way to promote micromobility, just kind of marketing it and promoting it, showing that we have micromobility storage options and that they are micromobility storage options.
I see it as like this free marketing though. So if you think there's a way to overcome that trade-off where you can have it in plain sight and still be very secure, that's the best goal.
Yeah, definitely. That is something we have to consider. We didn't really look too much into that, but we'll definitely look into that in the future. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the great presentation. And up next, we have our last group from the San Diego Zoo. So we'll welcome up Jessica again.
I call myself the Jessica of the park, so it's okay. I'm Luisa Radosevich, so I'm Jessica's colleague. Jessica works mostly at the zoo. I work mostly at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, which is our campus up in Escondido. But we both work together on a lot of our projects, both at the zoo, park, and field sites, like Jessica mentioned. So I worked a lot with our automatic feeding team, and this challenge had a lot of similarities to our Arboreal feeding team, in that we have a lot of challenges in providing feeding opportunities for our animals. It's one of the biggest challenges that we encounter is providing those feeding opportunities, because feeding is such a dynamic, really important opportunity for so many species. And we have care specialists that are only around for about 8, maybe 10 hours a day. And so that leaves a big chunk of time in that our animals might not have those opportunities. So providing some sort of automatic feeder or automatic system in that we would be able to allow animals to feed overnight or at different hours would provide opportunities for those natural feeding behaviors. It would also take some of the pressure off of the care staff in providing those opportunities so that they can maybe spend that time doing other things or focusing on some of the other animals that they care for. And again, it can potentially provide some more cognitive and physical challenges in accessing that food. Some of the hurdles that we generally encounter with feeding opportunities is pests. So in a lot of areas, specifically with our bird species, we have a lot of native species that can potentially take that food and create competition. So that's one big hurdle. Also, we have species from frugivores to carnivores to insectivores and so on. So providing food in an automatic way for various species that have different needs is a big challenge.
And then also cost. A lot of times different feeding strategies can be very costly. So creating a system that is also a little bit more accessible and inexpensive for a nonprofit like us is definitely a big thing. So with that, I will pass it off to the team.
Hello, my name is Kaushika. My name is Mehul. And we'll both be presenting for the automatic feeding team with the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance. Along with us was Ya Ying and Justin, who are also members of this team. So we decided to work with the bird aviary at the safari park, and we are designing this product for the stakeholders that we have listed up here. And our presentation will be divided into 6 sections where we'll be going through our process as well as final outcomes. So first, defining the challenge. Lisa went over a little bit of the problem frame beforehand, but with some of the problems that we have with automatic feeders, even though that they're available and accessible, it doesn't accommodate all food types, such as food that requires refrigeration or food items that are kind of mushy or sticky like meat. Gravity dispensing automatic feeders are common to use. However, it is kind of hard to maintain since there isn't as much support for repairs. Also, feeding times are crucial, and some automatic feeders aren't fully customizable, so it doesn't allow for randomization. So in order to address this problem frame, we conducted secondary research, visited the site location, conducted user interviews, and ideated solutions. For our background research, as you can see to the left, those are the current feeder setups in both aviaries at the zoo and the safari park. They're pretty much just a bowl that's either on the ground or is elevated. So keepers will come in every single morning and dispense the food, which is mostly composed of pellets, fresh fruit, seeds, nut, meat, etc. Since there are multiple types of birds coexisting in the aviary with different beak sizes, there are multiple feeders in the aviary. So the current feeder has issues with rodents and pest infestation. And when we're designing the feeder, we need to keep in mind to design something that will reduce group aggression as well as prolong feeding times. And we met up with the bird specialist, and they told us kind of the process as to how they feed the birds, which is pretty much they come in every single morning at random times to avoid conditioning. And to signify feeding time, they would either whistle or ring a bell. So our main objective when designing an automatic feeder is to design something that allows for randomization. And also when we're designing an automatic feeder, our main concern initially was whether or not we should be sacrificing automation, feeding time length, or nutrients, because we couldn't see how we can design something that could accommodate to all three. It was a question that we had asked during our user interviews. So during our first user interview with our stakeholders, we decided that we want to prioritize randomization of locations since there are multiple feeders existing in the aviary, try to find a cost-effective solution, which is either make it battery generated or have a solar panel. We initially wanted the automatic feeder to only dispense fresh food, and we also wanted to attach a camera to it where the zookeepers can monitor the birds, and it will be connected to zoo-wide Wi-Fi. We came up with some ideas, and we met with the bird specialist, and we kind of changed our focus a little bit, which was to include randomization of time as well. We officially decided on having it be battery generated. We decided to, instead of focusing on fresh food, only focus on pellet dispensing. And we also wanted to include a recordable message, so have a speaker on the automatic feeder. During our ideation or prototyping stage, we looked at existing automatic feeders, and we want to see some features that we could draw upon and also incorporate in our design. And these are the lo-fis that we came up with. They pretty much parallel existing cat and bird automatic feeders. And over here with the most left lo-fi, it has sections where you could put pellets in, and each section would gravity dispense. And this is controlled by a web application. And this is our final lo-fi, and we ended up prototyping it and making a computer rendering of it using Autodesk.
Now here we're going to present our final design that we created on Autodesk, like Kaushika mentioned. Here you can see the 3D design and all of its different parts that I will explain. There are 4 major parts. There are the feeding bowl, there's the wheel, there's the dispenser, and the container itself that will contain the different types of foods. So each of the different parts of our automatic feeder target our objectives, specifically in equivalent distribution, and we were targeting warding against group aggression. So a lot of these different parts work against those. So here the dispenser has a large pathway as an exit for the distribution of pellets and for equivalent distribution, as well as the feeding bowl. As you can see, there are grooves inside of the feeding bowl itself so that when the pellets or the different varieties of foods are dispensed, they are equivalently distributed within the bowl. The bowl also itself is on the larger scale so that multiple birds can visit the bowl at the same time and that birds can perch as they usually do. As you can see in that photo provided, those are the bowls that are usually used. So we designed something that was in a similar shape. The wheel goes underneath the container itself and it will be rotating so that there wouldn't be a distribution of too much food from the different sections. And we also made it that the different parts are removable because the bird specialists mentioned that that would be an issue. The container itself, we designed very specifically so that there are 4 different sections, as mentioned previously. Each section would then therefore have different types of foods, such as pellets, seeds, nuts, so that the variety of the bird's diet is addressed. And again, it can be removed for cleaning. Now, we also created a web application to support our automated feeder so that bird specialists would be able to change different settings if they need to on their phone. But before we began designing the actual application, we created a user persona, which would technically be an aviary keeper. Their goals or their main objectives would be having something that's automated and something that's convenient. It's basically something that would help them become more efficient in their job and their everyday day-to-day lives. Their main goals, again, would be randomized feeding times, which we prioritize when designing our application and our automated feeder, and having a camera, of course, to monitor behavior when they're not there would be ideal. However, this individual might have some pains in terms of technology and being technologically capable. Something is easy to maneuver would be great in terms of the application and the feeder itself. Also, again, we wanted to make sure to address the noise so that the animals were not actually aware of when their feeding times would be so that the noise could be randomized. And also the application would keep track of the animal's behavior. So here you can see our application. You would enter the application and you would log in. You would then be shown different types of feeders that you have on your system. For our example, we use feeder number 2. And as you click number 2, you are then directed to the sound. So if you can click the button, you would be able to play whatever sound that you wanted. You could signify that in the settings, but the sound would then be played in that particular feeder. We also have different pages available, the home setting, the home page, the settings page, calendar, and live cam. When you go to calendar, you could see on that particular day what that feeding time would be. And if you click analysis, you would see the different types of and feeding times and how they have changed. The settings are very generic. However, if you go to feeder setting times or feeder feeding time specifically, you could then change it to randomize or specific if you wanted to have a specific feeding time for that particular day. And again, the live camera, which you can have recorded or take photos of the animals. Now, our team wasn't able to address all of the various things that we wanted to ultimately. However, for the future teams who are going to pick up this project, we would like them to expand on the idea of different sections, ideally have something refrigerated so that the nutrients in the foods don't go bad. Ideally also have the option for it to be hanging so that arboreal animals would be able to use this automated feeder. We would want to add more technology to the feeder so that there are sensors to sense if an animal is going to be there and then dispense food. And of course, we would love our prototypes to come to life. So hopefully the future teams will be able to do that. But thank you so much for listening to our presentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
Is there something about the birds where they I'm just curious because I know like some systems so that way there's never competition and there's food.
Yeah, great question. Oh my gosh. I'll repeat the question. Essentially, I'll state it to the best of my abilities. The question was there a specific necessity for randomized feeding times? Essentially, is that the question?
Or like, I guess just a few feeding times.
Continuous feeding. Right. Well, in our background research, we realized having continuous feeding may not necessarily be the best for birds, especially because they are such small animals. Continuous feeding may not necessarily be the best for their diet. Also, because the food sits out, as we saw when we visited the site, pests are very easily attracted to that. In fact, we saw like dead baby rats and like small little insects. So that also affects the bird's nutrients and getting into the food that can lead to various different consequences, such as disease, cheese, things like that. So having something that would dispense food and then therefore there would be less food wastage, also pests wouldn't be attracted. So that's why it would be not continuous essentially.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great job to our last student presenters. And now for our last team, we have our representatives from JLab coming up. So here's Dan.
Thank you. All right, guys, I'm Dan Funk. I'm our marketing director here at JLab. JLab is a consumer electronics company based out of Carlsbad, up in North County. And what is JLab? We manufacture and design headphones, earbuds, true wireless earbuds, work headsets, USB microphones, and then just recently got into some PC peripherals with keyboards, mice, and webcams. JLab was founded in 2005, so still relatively young, at 15 years old, but we've accomplished a lot in those past 15 years. The brand started on Amazon, essentially doing a lot of earbuds and kids' headphones, and it was the kids' headphones that blew up on Amazon that kind of grew the brand, and then got the products into Walmart too, which was like the next step into the world of retail. Over the past 15 years, we've become the #1 true wireless and the #1 headphone brand under $100. Also the #1 kids headphone brand in the country. We've been awarded the best places to work in San Diego the past 6 years. We've won a lot of innovation awards from CES and various companies like that. And we're growing globally in over 70 countries now. And we are the official audio partner of Major League Soccer too, which is an exciting partnership for us. We're a challenger brand. We've been growing a lot in this space, and we've been competing up against some really big brands out there in the industry that have 50, 70 years of history, like Bose and Sony and Apple and some big guys like that. But we're doing it with a really small, lean team here. With the growth, it's been amazing, but there's definitely been challenges along the way. So we wanted to reach out to this group to help improve our consumer messaging with younger audiences, really to drive our brand awareness. The problem statement, really, to be honest, is that we have a significant market share, but our brand awareness was much lower. So people are buying JLab products and they don't know the brand. They're not remembering who the brand is. So really, we wanted to just increase our brand awareness. So first we had the group do a pre-audit. They just went online, checked out our website, our emails, our social. We had them go into Target and Walmart and Best Buys and look at the product in store and feel the packaging, but also look at the competition. What are other brands doing out there that works really well? So then meanwhile, like simultaneously while they were doing that, we had already finished a bunch of consumer research and we knew the brand awareness was low. But with that brand awareness play, we had already started a rebranding project. We weren't going to change the name of the brand or anything, just our messaging and how we talk to consumers, our taglines, things like that. So that was already in the works. So kind of the first phase was just to do the initial audit. Then they were actually able to be with us throughout these 14 weeks as we launched our new rebrand, and we got to use these guys and girls to get some more insights into how to incorporate that into our messaging, how to incorporate it onto the website, how do we talk to consumers versus how do we talk to trade, meaning like talking to the buyers at Target and Walmart's and talking to the retailers versus just the consumers. So it was awesome working with the team. Huge thank you to you guys. You were really honest with us. You brought a lot of great feedback to the team. And you had an impact too, which I hope you guys realize too. We're a small group at JLab, so you guys have these ideas and we could incorporate it immediately into our marketing plans and our marketing team. So it's a pleasure working with you guys. So with that, I'll hand it off to the student team.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for your wonderful introduction. And we are the last student team and focus on JLab brand audit. So I'm Evelyn. Here's my group member, Bria, Disney, and Brian. So our presentation may have 4 parts. We will talk about the background information, pre-audit, audit, and our conclusion. So yeah, I will pass through. Thank you.
So as Dan stated, JLab is a fast-growing company with really high in-store and online sales. However, it also seeks to expand its brand awareness. So in response, JLab created this awesome new brand direction. However, before its full implementation, JLab sought to audit its older brand positioning in order to inform its new direction. So us UCSD team members, we analyze key categories of this brand audit in order to provide key recommendations and some data analysis.
So to start, we developed a pre-audit that evaluates all of the sections you see on the slide. But for the purpose of this presentation, we'll be focusing on our recommendations for the website, digital advertisements, and social media. For the first part of our pre-audit, we just wanted to get our overall impression of the JLab brand as a whole. So we kind of split that up into 3 categories. The first being that at first, we really got the vibe that JLab came off as a budget brand. So that really stemmed from its lack of brand awareness and its low price. So then we kind of felt like you would go into Walmart or something and you would go and buy it just because of the price. And so what we suggested to address this was that JLab needed to move towards conveying value through their brand messaging rather than trying to promote sales and compete on price point. And that kind of aligns with our second impression, which was that they had a lot of overwhelming brand messages. When we went on their website, there was a very lengthy about us page. Something we wanted them to do was to improve on being more straightforward and transparent with customers. And this goes into our final impression, in which we felt like JLab seemed more like an athlete's brand because they had its MLS partnership, which is Major League Soccer, and that their slogan was #FindYourGo. So we thought it was nice that it really targeted athletes, but at the same time, we wanted them to be able to broaden a little bit when it comes to consumers.
Cool. So yeah, following our first pre-audit, we had some key recommendations, and I'll just be going over like the 3 that we thought were the most important. So the first one being the website. We just wanted like a general overhaul of the website, and we thought cleaning it up would just make it a lot better. And one way that they could do that is just having more, interactive or eye-catching aspects. And second to that is that they had a quiz on there to find like your perfect pair of headphones, and we also wanted to change that up as well. And the benefit of just doing this is that, having a messy website just doesn't really do too well for the image. So cleaning it up definitely gives people a better impression of like your value and makes the brand more attractive. And then secondly, for social media, wanted them to focus on more organic posts. And it just makes people more engaged with your social media, and it leads to like more followers. And it just leads to, better brand recognition overall. And lastly, for digital advertising, we wanted them to really just relay their messages on their ads clearly. And this would be done primarily through videos or clips, as opposed to static images that they already use. And, the benefit of this is that videos and clips keep the audience much more engaged as opposed to the static images.
So now with the final audit, the final brand direction in full swing, what the UCSD team did was to reevaluate the categories we had focused on for the pre-audit and provide some data analysis from our surveys and our overall focus group. So with these analyses that we got, this was the overall impression that we got of the JLab rebrand. So as stated prior, the lack of brand clarity and overall messaging made it a bit difficult for us to identify possible partnerships and overall social media direction. This also directly impacted how the brand was perceived by audiences. However, now with a new brand direction, it's really clear that JLab is consumer-centric and focused on fulfilling the tech needs of any consumer across a variety of target markets, and also doing so at a reasonable price point, all without reducing quality, but in fact, increasing it. And also with the rollout of the new slogan, "Your kind of tech," this invites consumers and allows them to be immersed in the array of JLab products that go far beyond just audio tech.
As part of our audit, we decided to conduct our own data through focus group interview and student survey. So for focus group, we learned that word of mouth advertising is one of the most influencing factor when it comes to purchase, come to make the decision. So we think JLab should emphasize that through social media engagement, because social media definitely can help JLab to spread message in their potential users. And then due to the data we collected through survey, there are 28% of respondents feel like JLab sounds familiar to them. So we think we need to increase brand awareness on that type of group people. And also features price reviews are top 3 factors influencing the customer decisions. Next.
And then, yeah, just following that final audit, we also had some other recommendations, starting with website again. Pretty similar thing, just want to streamline everything and just make the website a lot more clean. And this is just done through interactive product images or just a multi-dimensional, web page. And once again, this just makes the brand or the website cleaner, and it makes the brand look, more valuable and, not cheap, right? And then secondly, for social media, just wanted them to continue capitalizing on current media trends, and this would further their brand identity and makes, more people want to engage with them because they feel more natural. And then lastly, for digital advertisements, once again, yeah, just continue using short clips and montages of the products being used. And this just further iterates their new brand direction with their new hashtag your kind of tech, as it, kind of just shows off diverse group of people using a diverse, subset of tech products, right? Moving on. So with the future of JLab, after working with them for the past 14 weeks, really proud of where they've gone from this, and especially with their new brand direction from being more of an athletic brand to moving on to a product brand for everybody. And with that, we're super proud of it, but also for our overall conclusion is that we just kind of want them to continue with their clear brand messaging, and in addition to that, just keep on pushing their brand awareness with more authentic channels of interaction via social media. And yeah, thank you, everybody.
So I'm a weirdly ideal candidate to be here because I'm a huge JLab loyalist. Partly because kids' headphones are idiotically expensive, and there's no way you would ever spend that much money your child free. Which actually leads to my question: is JLab still doing the cycling? Because that was one of the, as a consumer, I get very few choices with my consumer technology. I can only really get an iPhone or an Android. I can really only get whatever random headphones they're selling in, where I happen to be at the moment. And so for me, getting to choose an independent, smaller company, eschewing a lot of the larger corporate entities that I'd really rather not support, and also being able to recycle the product when it breaks, which it doesn't very often. Especially for something like a kid's headphone, where you feel like I don't want to contribute to the consumerist destruction of the planet for my child so that he can listen to something on an airplane. I just wonder if there was any examination of the angle of smaller, more local, more artisanal, and more eco in your analysis.
Yeah, so let me reiterate the question at the best that I can. So what I got from the question is are there any kind of eco analysis that we made for the company? And to answer that, we did dive a little into how the brand kind of positions itself in terms of where they are environmentally. And we did talk to them about that, and they did mention that they in fact do have a recycling product, or not product, but recycling program. And we just didn't end up covering it in here, but we did touch on it just a little in our analysis. Yes.
right, a big thank you for all of you being here in person as well as on Zoom. And a huge thank you to this year's partners. We hope to have you again next year, and we hope to have more partners in the future. And if you'd like to get more involved, feel free to reach out to Jacques. Here's his info if you'd like to take a picture of the screen. We'd love to have more partners in the future and have more students involved to help you all out. Yes, and there's a Jacques info again. And a thank you to everyone that made this program possible. These are our partners. And as well as a huge congratulations to our students for getting through the program. All right, now we'll do our zoo ticket giveaway. So we'll see who got the lucky ticket on their way in. Okay. Sorry, last name is Lee, L-I. First name, sorry, I can't understand this. Alan, maybe? Alan, Lee? Or it could be Jan, John? Sorry, but last name is Lee. Does anyone have the last name Lee? Oh, yes. All right, well, congratulations. Is that you? That's you? Okay. Sorry for the mix-up. All right, congratulations, and I hope you have fun at the San Diego Zoo. All right, so please stay connected. Come on down to the basement. Here we're located, for those of you on Zoom, we're located on the first floor of the Design and Innovation Building, and we hope you continue to engage with all the wonderful programs we have at the basement. All right, thank you, and have a great evening.